Every level of a longshoreman's career and what the union actually pays. Salary decoded. You're 19, unloading shipping containers on a pier in Long Beach for $22 an hour, and a guy with 30 years on the docks tells you the union scale tops out at $46. He's lying. Not because he's dishonest, because he stopped looking up. The man running the crane above you made $248,000 last year. The dispatcher who never touches a box cleared $312,000. And the port director who hasn't set foot on a pier in 11 years took home $401,000 in total compensation. This is every level of a longshoreman's career. And the union contract most people never read is the only document that explains how. If you like breakdowns of how careers actually progress, like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Level 1. The casual. You're 19. The hall is a beige building off Anaheim Street in Wilmington, and it smells like burnt coffee and floor wax. You registered with the International Longshore and Warehouse Union, ILWU Local 13, 6 weeks ago. The registration put you on the casual list. There are 9,000 names ahead of yours. You show up at 6 a.m. for the shape. The dispatcher calls numbers from aboard. If your number comes up, you work. If it doesn't, you drive home. Some mornings, you drive home. The days you work, you make $36.07 an hour as a Class A casual on the Marine Clerk scale, or $28.94 on the Longshore scale, depending on what the board needs. You don't choose. The board chooses. You learn what a TEU is, 20-foot equivalent unit, a standard container. The Port of Los Angeles moved 10.9 million TEUs in 2023. You touched maybe 40 of them your first month. The work comes in waves. A vessel arrives, and the terminal is frantic for 18 hours. Then, nothing for 2 days. You build your life around a phone that may or may not ring before 4 a.m. The Longshore casual list at LA/Long Beach runs between 8,000 and 10,000 registered workers competing for dispatch. In a good month, you clear $3,200. In a slow month, you clear $900 and wonder if the forklift certification course at the community college was the wrong investment. It wasn't. You just can't see that yet. Level 2, the B-Man. You're 23. It took 4 years of casual dispatch to accumulate enough registered hours to test for B-List membership. The B-List card costs nothing. The years it took cost everything. B-Men earn scale under the Pacific Maritime Association Agreement. The current ILWU PMA contract, negotiated in 2023 after a work slowdown that cost the port an estimated $800 million in delayed cargo, sets Longshore scale at $43.69 an hour for B-List members on day shift. Night differential pushes it to $52.43. Sunday premium runs $87.38. You work the container yard at Trepac Terminal on the south end of the port. The straddle carriers are the size of apartment building. Your job this week is lashing. You climb the stack after the crane sets a box. You connect the twist locks and turnbuckles that keep a 40-foot container from sliding off the vessel in the Pacific. The vessel is headed to Tokyo. You will never see Tokyo. You lash in the rain. You lash at 2 a.m. You lash when the wind off the harbor drops the temperature to 44 degrees, and the steel is wet, and the twist lock housing is corroded, and your fingers are too cold to feel the click. OSHA, 1918, governs longshore safety. The Bureau of Labor Statistics injury rate for water transportation and longshore workers runs 4.8 per 100 full-time workers. In 2022, the BLS recorded 19 fatalities in the water transportation sector. You know, 2 men who were injured in the same terminal in the same calendar year. One came back, one didn't. You don't tell your family the details of the work. You tell them you move boxes, level 3. The A-Man. You're 28. Your annual W-2 at the end of year 1 as a B-Man clears $71,400. You cash the first real paycheck of your life and sit in your truck in the parking structure for 4 minutes before starting the engine. The A-list promotion came through on a Tuesday in February. No ceremony. A letter from the ILWU Pacific Coast District Office and an updated dispatch priority code in the union system. You've been waiting for this letter for 9 years. The ILWU PMA master contract sets A-list longshore scale at $50.27 an hour base. Clerk scale runs higher. Walking boss scale runs higher still. The mechanics and skilled trades classifications under the same contract clear $58 to $64 an hour, depending on the endorsement. You went back to the training center on Terminal Island 3 years ago and added the crane operator endorsement. 40 hours of simulator time. A practical evaluation on a ship-to-shore crane with a PMA assessor watching from the cab. You passed on the first attempt. The endorsement added $9.18 an hour to your scale. The crane cab is 200 feet above the terminal floor. On a clear morning, you can see Catalina Island from the seat. The spreader bar descends on the stack and you place a 67,000-pound box onto a chassis with 2 inches of clearance on each side. You do this 22 times an hour on a good shift. The PMA ILWU Health and Welfare Plan covers your family with 0 premium contribution. The pension accrues at $182 per credited service year under Class A rules. Level 4. The Walking Boss. You're 34. You make $131,000 in year 2. You stop checking your bank account every morning. The check is there. The check is always there now. Your brother-in-law asks at Thanksgiving if you ever worry about your job being automated. You've read the PMA automation study. You've read the GTO's findings at the Port of Rotterdam. You tell him you're not worried. You drive home and read the PMA automation study again. A walking boss is the first rung of longshore supervision. You don't run the crane anymore. You run the gang. 8 to 12 longshoremen, a hatch boss, and a vessel operation that the terminal superintendent holds you personally responsible for. The ILWU walking boss classification falls under the Foreman's Union, ILWU Local 94 in LA. The scale under the current agreement runs $64.88 an hour. A full-year walking boss with consistent assignments clears between $160,000 and $190,000. You manage a container discharge on a 14,000 TEU vessel out of Yantian. The vessel has 11 decks. Your gang works 2 hatches simultaneously. The cargo plan runs 847 pages. You have read the relevant 40 before the vessel tied up. A chassis shortage in the yard backs up the operation at hour 6. The terminal superintendent calls your radio. You've already rerouted the flow to the secondary staging area and notified the trucker dispatch. The superintendent asks how you knew. You tell him you've been watching the chassis pool since the vessel rounded the breakwater. He doesn't say anything. He clicks off the radio. The accident happens on a Thursday in March. Not your gang. The terminal north of yours. A longshoreman is struck by a forklift during a container transfer. He survives. OSHA opens an investigation under 29 CFR 1918.65. The terminal receives a serious citation and a $14,502 penalty. Level 5. The Marine Clerk. You're 39. You tested for the Marine Clerk classification after a clerk with 31 years retired and opened a slot in the local 63 seniority book. The test covered cargo documentation, bill of lading verification, hazmat classification under 49 CFR, and customs entry procedures. You studied for 11 weeks on your own time. You passed. 41 people took the test. 9 passed. Marine clerks are the paper and data layer of the port. Every container that moves through a terminal moves because a clerk verified the documentation, confirmed the booking number, cleared the customs hold, and released the chassis. When a clerk misses a hazmat discrepancy, the Coast Guard gets involved. When a clerk catches one, nobody outside the terminal ever knows. The ILWU Local 63 clerk scale under the current coast contract runs $58.47 an hour base. Senior clerk classifications and lead clerk designations push the effective rate to $67 to $74 an hour. Your W-2 this year reads $203,000. You process 400 to 600 container transactions per shift on a busy vessel. You manage customs examination holds, overweight alerts, and cargo discrepancy reports simultaneously across 3 terminal systems that were built in 3 different decades and do not communicate with each other without a workaround. You figured out, in your 2nd month, the port processed $300 billion in trade value in 2023. Your signature is on documentation for a fraction of that number that would take 4 minutes to say out loud. A Customs and Border Protection officer flags a 40-foot container inbound from Qingdao. The manifest lists agricultural equipment. The weight certificate is 4,200 kilograms over the declared figure. You pull the booking, cross-reference the shipper history, and file the discrepancy report before the vessel finishes docking. The container goes to exam. You never find out what was in it. You don't need to. Level 6. The port director, you're 52. The Port of Long Beach is the second busiest container port in the Western Hemisphere. You did not become its director by climbing a single ladder. You climbed 4 simultaneously for 20 years. The Port of Long Beach director's total compensation package in 2024 ran $401,000, base salary of $311,000, performance bonus of $62,000, benefits and deferred compensation account for the remainder. The figure is public record under California Government Code 53,908. You manage a $700 million annual operating budget. You oversee 49 terminal leases. You testify before the Senate Commerce Committee on Supply Chain Resilience. You flew to Rotterdam in March and to Singapore in October, and to Washington twice in between. The port generated $200 billion in trade value last year. Every optimization decision you make, berth scheduling, electrification timelines, automation implementation, runs through a political, environmental and labor calculus that has no clean answer and a public comment period. The ILWU is both your workforce and your counterpart at the negotiating table. You sat across from union leadership for 14 months during the 2022 to 2023 contract negotiation. The work slowdown during those negotiations cost the terminal operators an estimated $800 million. You know exactly what that number means, because you built the model that calculated it. You drive yourself to work. The port is 22 minutes from your house on a good morning. On a bad morning, it's 51 minutes, and you use the time to take calls. Final beat. The casual list at ILWU, Local 13, opened for new registrations on a Wednesday morning in April. 9,412 people submitted applications by noon. You signed the approval memo. Somewhere in that list is a 19-year-old who will show up at the hall on Anaheim Street at 6 a.m. and drive home when the board doesn't call their number. They'll do it again the next morning, and the morning after that. They don't know your name. They don't know you stood in the same hall 33 years ago, with the same coffee and the same drive home and the same quiet decision to come back. The port moved 10.9 million TEUs last year. Every single one of them started with someone who showed up when the board didn't call.